Okay, I know what you're thinking. As the Max Verstappen World Domination Tour is likely to continue into 2024, what the hell is there to be excited about for next season? Well, just a few things actually. In 2024, 13 driver contracts will be expiring, leading to what could be the craziest silly season in driver markets we've ever seen. Okay, it's technically 15 drivers out of contract, but I think Leclerc is about to be announced soon at Ferrari, and Stroll is, shall we say, protected. But before you say, hang on Paul, that's all off the track, what does that have to do with racing? Well, it has everything to do with it, because these 13 drivers are going to be doing everything they can to sell themselves for 2024, be it to their existing team or somewhere else on the grid. Some, I would even say, are fighting for their place in F1 entirely, knowing that 2024 could be the end of the road for them. So with this extra baggage potentially affecting their driving and the attitude that they are bringing to the new season, I think we will see a lot of awesome driving, some acts of desperation, and a lot of tension, especially between some teammates. But let's say we get to mid-season, some available spots are beginning to dry up, some drivers still have uncertain futures. How would that affect certain guys like Perez and Sainz? Two drivers who are expected to play the team game, but how would they behave knowing that they are going to be dropped for 2025? Will they continue as normal, or will they start looking out for number one a bit more, rejecting any team orders that favour the other driver? We also might find some drivers having to wait a little bit longer to get that position at a top team. Two examples here straight away are Albon and Norris, two great drivers and who have the attention of a few teams on the grid right now. Whilst I think either of them would be great in a Red Bull or a Ferrari, they might find that the seats get locked out, and whether they like it or not, they will have to spend another year at their respective team before they get that big drive that they want. But on the other end of the spectrum, we might get drivers who find out that they're maybe not as attractive as they thought they were to the big teams. For example, a poor showing from Ricciardo could kill any notions of a move back to Red Bull stone dead, especially if Perez performs well, but also with Lawson chomping at the bit. Another is Valtteri Bottas, who I'm sure has eyes on a contract extension at Sauber so that he can be part of the new Audi F1 project. But Bottas was anonymous last year, and if he repeats this in 2024, I'm not sure Sauber or Audi will want the invisible man in their seats, especially for the longer term. Now you'd think with his experience he'd be quite valuable lower down the order, but unfortunately for Bottas, he's already lower down the order. So if Sauber replace Bottas for 2025, we might find F1 without a Finnish driver, and that would be sad. But the big takeaway from all this chat about who has a contract and who hasn't got one for 2025, we all kind of know in F1 that contracts mean very little. What if Mercedes produces an absolute shed of a car in 2024, leading to Hamilton and Russell to say, I've had enough, and walk away from the team? Perhaps the Sport in Lewis's case, even though both are contracted until the end of 2025. There will be some big developments with contracts throughout the season, and it will affect what we see on the track. Now, big shock, I think that Red Bull will win the Constructors' Championship again. And before everyone says, oh, that's so boring, oh, not again. Firstly, I don't think Red Bull are going to win on the same scale as they did last year, and I think we will see more variety in race winners. The regulations are pretty much the same, so in theory, this means that the other team should be able to close the gap. Or maybe not, because Red Bull have Adrian Newey, and yeah, you know what sort of thing he does. But if you look slightly below the headlines, I think the battle for second, third, fourth, and even fifth in the Constructors' Championship is going to be wild in 2024. Teams like Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, and even Aston Martin could be forced into a bottleneck behind Red Bull, and this battle would be, to call it tense would be an understatement. Consistency will be key, and that is something that might shoot down McLaren and Aston Martin, who both fell into huge dips in results last year and had to claw back the points later on. Mercedes and Ferrari are both in a similar situation where they're trying to decide whether to continue on their current path or try something completely different. I think Ferrari are slightly ahead of this with Fred Vasseur, but I think Mercedes are still trying to figure out how to carry themselves. Basically, does Mercedes take the red pill or the blue pill? But also, AlphaTauri are predicted to make a huge jump as they adopt a Red Bull kind of mini-me philosophy. So could they even hassle the front-end teams with their kind of Red Bull hand-me-down parts? Now, further down the order, 2024 is going to be a serious make-or-break year for Alpine, Williams, Sauber and Haas. It can be argued that each of them progressed in some areas and failed in others, but all of them looked quite pleased that the 2023 season was finally over. But yeah, it is going to be crunch time for these guys next year. Alpine's main weakness is its management, and as even more more investors come into the team, you kind of wonder what's really the advantage of this. But also, what's the vision for this team? What's their intent? They also have a decent driver lineup in Ocon and Gasly, but a poor show in 2024 could mean that they could potentially lose one or both of them. And then you have Williams, who really shifted on in 2023 and will be looking to repeat this in 2024. They kind of have the most stable management, I would say, out of these teams, but some of their moves, like retaining Logan Sargent, you have to wonder, was this the most proactive move from them? Another jump in performance might entice Albon to stay at Williams for another year, but after the jump that they made in 2023, they really can't afford to fall back anymore. Now, Sauber are just in a holding pattern until they get picked up by Audi in 2026, and are just making sure that when they do so, the core Sauber operation is in the best condition it can be. And this means driver lineup, finances, commercial partnerships, etc, etc. But if they have another really shocking season in 24 as well as 25, will Audi still be willing to pick up a bottom of the standings team and have to inject even more money into it again just to make it competitive? And then you have Haas, and well, you've just got to admire Gene's patience, to be honest. They really need to look at why they're in F1, because if Gene doesn't fancy doing it anymore, 2024 will be a really good shop window should he want to sell the team. They have a nice little title sponsor, so financially they've been in worse shape, but Hülkenberg will be doing his best to get out, meanwhile Magnussen is going to be doing his best to try and stay in. And another thing is liveries, one of my most favourite points of the season, and I think we're going to see some really refreshing designs and also some surprises as well. Teams like Williams have secured some new sponsors since the start of 2023, so I hope that that switches things up on the livery front. And with Monster Energy jumping ship from Mercedes to McLaren, we might see a papaya orange car with flashes of luminous green. The scale of the Monster McLaren partnership isn't clear yet, but it's going to be really interesting to see what comes of it. Imagine if they became title sponsor, Monster McLaren Mercedes. It would have an amazing ring to it, and also with that new money coming in from Bahrain, yeah, big hitters in the future maybe. And Sauber are apparently having a rethink on their name, as their recent release was met with some interesting feedback. But whatever they're called, I'm sure we're going to see something different with their new sponsors, Stake.com and Kick, having some nice colour schemes. Again with the luminous green. What's wrong with me? And also, who knows what Mercedes are going to do? Are they going to stick with their black livery, return to silver, or maybe a combination of both? I think they'll return to silver and ditch the black livery, because I think it's given them more bad memories recently than good ones. Return to silver, pretend it's still 2016. Sorted. AlphaTauri, or whatever they're going to be called, might throw out something interesting, with their full name being Scuderia AlphaTauri RB, RB being Red Bull, but as we've seen with RB Leipzig, it could mean something completely different. Maybe RB stands for Russian business. Now, there will also be 24 Grand Prix next season, so it's going to be really interesting to see how the teams and the drivers are going to handle this. And also, you've got to feel for the boots on the ground, you know, like the regular folks at these teams. It's a massive, massive schedule. 24 Grand Prix, I think, is a bit much, but we just need to see what this brings. So China is back on the calendar this year. Hooray, I guess. It will also be good to see F1 return to Imola after it was rightfully cancelled last year due to the natural disaster that they had. It's just a proper circuit with gradients and grass and gravel traps, the whole thing, and not just a street circuit or converted car park. And speaking of converted car parks, I'm actually looking forward to seeing how the Miami Grand Prix existential crisis will play out after the commercial success of the Las Vegas Grand Prix in 23. Does Miami still serve a purpose, or are there perhaps some more deserving circuits and countries out there, like South Africa, for example? Now, whether a constructor is running in first or fifth or even last place, it's so entertaining to watch a battle between two teammates. And I think in 2024, we are going to see plenty of those. I don't really see Perez bending over for Max, and I think we could really see some interesting fights between these two, particularly earlier in the season. Perez must know in his heart of hearts that his time at Red Bull is coming to an end. And with that, this is no time to be submitting to Max, as he has to try and sell himself and put him on the shop floor for other teams. Hamilton and Russell is going to be another big one, because now they're drawing 1-1 after their 2 seasons together. Both think they are better than the other, and in one direction, I suppose that's correct, but in the other way, I'm not so sure. I think Russell should be using this time, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, to just soak up anything he can from Hamilton, just so that he can take this forward later in his career, long after Hamilton has retired. However, they both have big egos, and given that the performance of the Mercedes is in no way guaranteed, neither of them are going to want to let up or do any favours for each other. And then we have Ferrari, which is in a completely different scenario, as it has Leclerc nearly there with a new contract, all the way up until 2029. So I find it strange how Fred Vasseur is saying that Leclerc and Sainz will be getting equal treatment at Ferrari. Meanwhile, one driver has a long contract pretty much sorted, and the other one, Sainz, doesn't. With Sainz, I think Ferrari are waiting for the penny to drop for him so that he needs to realise that he needs to play the game here, support Leclerc, and then he can have a new contract. However, I'm not sure Sainz is going to do this because I think he has qualities that Leclerc doesn't, and also he has value in the driver market. If he puts out a come and get me to McLaren if Norris goes, or to Sauber so he can be part of their new Audi F1 operation, he'll be snapped up immediately. And on the subject of McLaren, I think there's potential for things to get messy there between Norris and Piastri in 24. Lando Norris really needs to make that jump up now and win that first race, but also at the same time, McLaren need to give him the tools and the car to do so. Otherwise, he's going to be snapped up by other potential teams like Red Bull or Ferrari. Norris also doesn't seem to be too pleased when Piastri finishes ahead of him, so it's going to be really interesting to see how this dynamic plays out in 2024. And also how Norris is going to take this I need to win now baggage into next season. That's going to be really interesting to see. And then finally we have Alpine, who probably have the most equally matched pairing in Ocon and Gasly for next season. I think we'll see them resume their rivalry from last year. It's no secret that the pair of them don't like each other that much. But it's whether Alpine can deliver a car that's capable of fighting for the top 4 or 5 and not be swallowed up by the teams following them, like Williams or AlphaTauri. You know, I think there's going to be a famine mentality at Alpine next year in the way that points are going to be so few and far between. Ocon and Gasly are going to be fighting between each other even more in 2024 than they were in 2023. I don't think either driver is going to want to work with the other one after 2024, so we're going to see who is going to go elsewhere after that season. So that's my thoughts on 2024. I think it's going to be a really interesting season. It's going to be lots of drama going on. There's going to be lots of battling amongst the teams. There's going to be lots of moving around. So I think we've actually got a lot more to look forward to, much more than we think. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you later.